Hi, I'm Ennis. Thank you for rising up. It's summer, and it's raining all the time. Maybe today, when you're watching this, maybe at night, it's not raining, but why has it been raining? And one of the things that has been raining are West Hartford politicians. I know, it's summer. How come we're talking about politics? It seems like ever since the Trump era, that's all we talk about is politics. Well, right now we're talking about local politics. And what I want you to do is I want you to meet two guys who I'm going to call ex-Republicans. Meet Lee Gold. Lee Gold is a partner at Butler, Norris, and Gold. He was a member of the town council as a Republican and now is unaffiliated. Mark Merritt is a candidate for town council, as is Mr. Gold. He is the head of distribution at Melius Investments in West Hartford in California. He is the campaign manager of a new party, a Connecicut party of West Hartford. Gentlemen, welcome to Rise Up.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Don.
I'm really excited to talk to you guys because maybe it's not fair to call you ex-Republicans, but I don't know what else to call you. You're not Democrats. You're not progressives. Is conservative the right title? What is the affiliation, a Connecicut party of West Hartford? What does that mean?
That's a great question, and I'll take it from there.
Okay, I threw the ball up in the air, and
I grabbed it.
Yes.
So when I originally ran on my platform almost 2 years ago now, I always called myself fiscally conservative and socially moderate to liberal in certain situations. And I think what we're looking to strive to do is create a situation where we're trying to gather information, voices, people from everywhere to try to have more of an open tent scenario and be more based in the middle. And I think that's important for me. I know Mark and I have talked about it at length, and our the people on our slate.
Rick, you're not alone.
We have Rick Bush
and Ronnie
Rodman who are joining us on this journey, and we're excited about it. I think there's a lot to do. There's a lot of issues to solve. There's a lot of choices to make as we go forward and position West Hartford in a way that suits us, not just a year from now or 2 years from now, but 5, 10, 25 years from now. And that's one of the goals that we have in mind in trying to develop a platform, an idea, multiple ideas obviously, to move our town to continue to be in the forefront of development and a beacon of greater Hartford and Connecticut.
Now, Mark, you left the Republican Party. Why? What was the reason? What was the impetus?
The impetus most likely was about how do we create a platform to actually talk with our residents and fellow neighbors about how do we get things done? What are some solutions and ideas, and how do we act on those ideas? And we do it together in a more cohesive and collaborative way. And part of that is by creating a platform that does not beholden to one or the other ideology, especially when you said reigning politicians for the last couple of years, is how do we create an opportunity for the folks that have been drowned out by the left or the right side? And let's come to the middle, especially here in West Hartford. We're all neighbors. How do we get things done and move things forward for the future? As I've been here for 28 years, how do I want to stay and have other families come in and live 28, 50 years down the road? And how do we make our community vibrant about that? So I did do that because I don't think we had the infrastructure ready enough for us to do it. And we wanted to, break new ground.
You're working in your father's law firm. You're a partner. How long have you been in West Hartford?
So I've been here just over 20 years. I grew up in Wethersfield, where my father was actually a mayor in that town as well. I have a lot of thoughts and ideas that stem decades coming into what we're doing now. And I think I want West Hartford to be a place that my kids will want to come back to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. Developing certain areas of the town is important from an economic standpoint. So those are some of the initial ideas and thoughts that we want to promote in terms of economic development, strategic consolidation of certain things, buildings, municipal buildings, and things of that nature, which if you listen to me on the town council, I've been talking about that. And I think it's very important.
You've also been voting with the Democrats a lot. I would say that your votes almost always align with the Democrats.
There are times that I have. There's times that I've abstained. There's times that I haven't voted with them. I always want to do and vote my mind, my conscience, my moral compass. I want to do what I think is in the best interest for the town. I remember at one town council, I mentioned that I was representing all of West Hartford, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, but unaffiliated, and everybody of the town voted for me in one way or another, and they entrusted me with, with this position to make the right decisions, and that's what I've always tried to do and strive for.
And you got a lot of votes. The only person who, on the Republican ticket at that time, who did better was Mary Fay, who has now stepped in and become the chair of the Republican Party and the town council, running the Republicans in West Hartford. How's your relationship with Miss Fay, a former guest of ours, by the way?
I understood she was a guest here, and I think it was a great interview from what I understood.
She was a guest after she didn't show up one time, but that's okay.
All right.
She showed up eventually.
All
But,
right.
I mean, it seems as if you guys aren't really talking together. You're sort of talking at each other.
Well, we have differing opinions in terms of how things should progress and be voted on and thought about. I don't necessarily want to just be the person that says no because I'm a Republican, and that's not important. That it's important for me to be a voice, as I said, for everybody. Mm-hmm. And sometimes to say no without an idea to move forward doesn't make sense to me.
Full disclosure, I am a member of the Democratic Party. I am an alternate to the Democratic District 1. I don't see the name that I've heard you guys called, which is the Party of No. Why do you think that Party of No name is stuck, and how do you get away from that?
Well, part of moving off and starting a Connecticut party was one of the things when Lee and I talked about it, and with Rick and Ronnie initially, is what could be our party that we could actually work with, and what were some of the attributes of a party that really fit into what we wanted to accomplish, which was, when you look at what Lowell Weicker and the A Connecticut Party stood for back 30 years ago and what was happening at the state then, it really applies now. Let's talk about the individuals, let's talk about the solutions, let's talk about the ideas and the action around it, but not the letters next to your name. So how do we come together as a community? So that is kind of how we are approaching this and moving forward with that.
There have been critics who have said, of all the people you wanted to align yourself with, Lowell Weicker, maybe not your best choice. I mean, can you defend why Lowell Weicker as opposed to starting something brand new?
Well, part of why him, and at the time, if you look back 30 years ago, it wasn't just Lowell Weicker. There was a lot of other individuals that were upset with the whole dichotomy of what was happening in the state as a whole. And you had Eunice Growick, you had Lieberman that also ended up running as an independent. So we have somewhat of an independent streak here in Connecticut to actually think about how we can get things done. And then the people voted for them back then. And so why not have that Charter Oak mentality that it's all about West Hartford and potentially about the whole state. And that's why we did, and we looked at that specifically. When you looked at all the other parties that are out there, it really spoke to us and why it meant a lot to us to do that.
Who do you think is your target in terms of, to be on the council, you have to basically take the seat of someone who's on there right now. You already have a seat.
Except me.
You have a seat you want to retain.
Yes.
Is the intention to take a Democrat out or take the Republicans out, or what's your goal?
I think our goal is we have a slate of 4, and we'd like all of them to be elected, and I think that's important. If that happens, then West Hartford has spoken, and I think if you're talking about demographics, there's about 40% who are Democrat in town. There's about 38% unaffiliated, and about 18% that are Republican.
Right.
So there's a kind of a shift that's happened that is, I would say, monumental in terms of where there's targets and where people are politically aligned in terms of what they're looking for. And I think a lot of people have expressed a desire to have their voice heard, who are in that moderate world, in that centrist area. And I think it speaks to both of us in terms of where we're thinking and where I've generally been.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing you're doing right now is sort of a talking tour. We met because the Progressive Women of Connecticut invited you to come explain what it is you're up to. Do you plan to do more of those little town hall kind of things to explain yourself?
I would love to. And anybody that would like to invite us, we're all open to whatever dates we can fit in, obviously.
We'll connect you through our website.
Okay,
We'll put the Twitter handles and Instagram or emails, whatever it is you prefer. But tell me a little bit about why you'd want to not just, join the Democrats. Tell me why you're not Democrats.
So a little history about me. I grew up in Rhode Island, Bristol, Rhode Island, so a very heavily Democratic state as well in town. And I appreciated that. It is blue. It's just as Connecticut is. But I consider myself what the old term of a Yankee Republican. Okay. Someone, so I fiscal conservative, but again, as Lee mentioned, I'm more social and moderate on a number of liberal issues. Mm-hmm. But as it pertains to someone's life and the respect for people and their individualistic items. So that is kind of why I more or less sided with the Republican side of the House for 30 years, because more the conservative fiscal approach that was taken, more individual rights, state rights, and everything else, and not a federal government mandate. And so that's kind of where I think, that's why I can't really make that jump. Unaffiliated for me is probably the middle of the road for me.
I remember when Republicans were the party of, well, what you do is your business, don't get involved. But ever since Trump, it's been a different kind of party. How much impact did the insurrection and the president's misdeeds impact your decision?
Go ahead.
Either one.
I was just going to say that was really, I co-authored a letter to the editor with our mayor.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes in terms of where my position was and where I started going, leading all the way up to Liz Cheney being ousted. And while she was very conservative in a lot of her views, yes, what I respected about her was that she stood up for her views and her ideas. Mm-hmm. And to be thrown down and chastised and sidelined doesn't make sense to me. And that just was the final straw in my mind as to why I was doing what I was doing.
Would you have participated in the January 6th event at the Capitol if you could have?
Absolutely not.
Tell me why.
I actually made a tweet just a couple of weeks after the election and congratulating the Biden-Harris. I felt that they won the election. And as my previous role, I tweeted that it was, congratulations, let's move on.
Let's work together.
And let's work together and go forward on that. And part of everything else that has transpired after that was something that if there was 59 lawsuits that were filed and nothing came out of any of them, and it still continues to harbor on. So part of my thing is just own it, right? So own the good, own the bad, and just move on, and so accept the responsibility. And that's kind of what I would never have done that. No, because the Stop the Steal rally was already about stopping the stealing of an election, which was already been certified by a lot of the states. So,
and I watched it live on television with my children, and I can't believe that people are now saying, oh, it's just like tourists visiting the Capitol. I saw it with my own eyes, and they're telling us what we didn't see. Oh, you don't believe what you see. What are you going to believe, your own lying eyes or what I'm telling you? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about this. If you were all elected, all four of you, Ronnie, Rick, Mark, Lee, it's 3 white guys and a woman. People who are watching this see 2 white people with another white woman who's transgender. At least the Republicans have a lesbian on their ticket. You're not very diverse. Is that a criticism? Is that fair that you're basically all white people?
I don't think that's a criticism. It's not fair. Well,
what's Hartford is, as you said, it's very diverse. We have a large percentage of people of color. We have Latinas and Latinos, and the LGBT population is supposedly 5% or so. So I'm just curious as to how do you reach that audience?
So what I like about what we've created so far is that while we have 4 candidates, 3 white men and a white woman there, is that we have a large number of people behind the scenes right now working on the campaign that are diverse, whether they are African American, they are female, and we want to open it up to a lot of other people to come in and help with ideas. So we're not excluding anybody, but what I like about what we've created so far as a team behind the scenes is that diversity. I know you don't see it because you got the 4 of us out front, but I guess there's a lot of people behind this that is looking at age-wise too as well. We've got a lot of demographics, whether it's 20, 25-year-olds all the way up to folks that are in their 60s that are wanting to help and being active with us.
That's great.
So which doesn't tell the whole story because you don't see it, but we have a lot of those folks now helping, wanting us to move forward as a slate.
And tell me, are you planning on doing anything in terms of your platform that would affect that community that isn't represented by your identities right now? As far as Elmwood, as far as public housing, things like that.
Well, I think Elmwood is one of the areas that's really, truly ripe for development.
Tell me about it.
And there's certain buildings that have actually gone in already. I think the transit-oriented district in that complex there is amazing, and it will provide, I believe, a lot of economic development, a lot of growth, bodies coming in. I think I just lost my something dropped.
It's nothing that we need to worry
Okay.
about.
You'll have population growth. There's new buildings that opened up, apartment buildings on New Britain Avenue, New Park Avenue, that area, going all the way up to Park Road, where one park has been developed, where you'll have about 275 units, of which 10% will be workforce housing, which is an amazing boom into that new corridor, which goes from Prospect Avenue, New Park Avenue, all the way down to Elmwood. I think the St. Bridget's School purchase is a great thing. It will help to revitalize Elmwood for decades.
Something the Republicans voted against, actually.
Correct. And there's
Mary said no, and then the other gentleman, what did he say? He said, I'm abstaining or I'm against it. I can't remember the exact.
He was, I guess, gently against it, but he was against it.
Bottom line is the Republicans opposed it, but it still went through. And this is a possible substitution or replacement for the Elmwood Community Center.
Correct, and this is a transformational type of purchase that the town needs to look into. And Mark and I have been talking about, sometimes you have to spend money to make money.
Right.
And here's a perfect opportunity where we saw the numbers, we saw what it was, and it made sense from a fiscal standpoint to purchase it, knowing that, number one, you can look to deal with the two properties, the Faxon Library and the Elmwood Community Center as is, potentially as sale items. I think if you look on the assessment books, they're about $9 million between the two of them collectively. And if you put all that together, you're growing business potentially, bring in some housing, things of that nature, and you all of a sudden create a new vibe into the Elmwood area.
We're neighbors. Let's talk about the Bishop's Corner area. I think it's wonderful, but that UConn property, what a mess. And how much responsibility does the council have in that becoming a bigger mess than it was before?
Well, so that was, I think that happened before I started on the council.
You're both new to politics. Let's get that out of the way, right?
Yes. So the first time through, it all the due diligence was done, and the history is there. It was sold to Ideonomics and
Idiomics.
And there were opportunities for the town to still be involved in some capacity, but right now, I'd like to actually look at the blight policy. They're getting fined at $79 a day, which is interesting. But that's a policy that I think, from a perspective in the town for working to better our environment, maybe we should look at a new type of blight policy, which hasn't been done in years.
People also say there's rats running rampant through those high weeds, and who knows what else is going on. What do you think?
That's correct. I mean, I think part of what we're trying to do and help the voters understand about a vision and what we're trying to do for quality of life initiatives in our platform, part of our platform I'll share a little bit about. And that includes the UConn property. Back when it was up for purchase and not knowing all the knows that were going on there and what the state was going to provide to us, because it was a state property and they weren't going to do any backdrop for us on a financial remediation perspective, so it didn't make fiscal sense at that point in time. But the thing is, I don't know if we had a vision for what that property would look like, whether it was the east side or the west side of Trout Brook. And so what we have is we have an idea of how to utilize the Miracle League Field that they was invested a lot of money there, Little League Fields. How do we take advantage of using that property and maybe go to the new owners and say, let's work out a financial arrangement for that side of the property. And here's what our vision is for that property, whether it is a multi-use field, whether it is a dog park, something that we can develop that in a little bit more open space that can be there on that side. So providing a vision for that.
And
that's what we're doing.
Does your new party pay for a dog park? Because that's really popular.
That's one of the things that I actually was campaigning on to begin with. Yeah. I would love a dog park.
Sully would like it, who's our black lab.
So would Dahlia, and I agree. Let me finish your sentence then.
And so those are the kind of things that we want to work on. And the other thing about St. Bridget's, I fully supported that, and I put a letter in for that one. What I really liked about it is the support by the Elmwood business community that also wanted to have that purchase done to create a community center. Right? We don't have a multi-generational community center where kids and older adults can get together and then sharing of ideas and bringing a community part together. And I think that will open up the doors where that investment that we will be making will really help and transform that. That'll be one more step in helping transform that part of the community. But again, we need to look at something in the entire town, not just the north end, the south end, and other areas, but how do we look and grow West Hartford all together?
There's even talk that maybe combining the two high schools, is that something you guys are interested in?
That's one of the things that I've been talking about, yes.
Tell me why you do that, and may I just say that when I mentioned it, a big why, two people passing by said, "That's crazy."
There's a lot to it, but in a elevator pitch for it, because I know we're short on time.
Oh, take as much time as you need.
Very good, thank you. If we were to combine the high schools, there's a location that I think would make sense for it. If we were to sell off the Hall area, sell off the Conard area to private developers, the town's making money on those sales. And in the Conard area, it's ripe for some sort of housing development, which makes sense on all different levels, from affordable to workforce to all the way to middle class and upper class, whatever needs to be in there that suits the purpose of that area. Conard, I think, would be a very interesting place because you're near the highway to have some sort of office park, a state-of-the-art type of office park with outdoor setting, park setting that would make sense for that community and that environment, rather than a school that would be having buses nonstop and Friday night lights and all the activities that come with a high school. When you do that and you combine the schools, one of the offshoots that happen is people are looking for residents now in town and not worrying about which high school your children would go to, because you only have one. It's one high school for the town, and it would have a unique offshoot of creating diversity of housing throughout the town. People wouldn't say, I want to live on the north side or the south side or east or west or wherever. You pick where you think makes sense. And now with the development, as we were just talking about with Elmwood, that might make sense there because you're having a new community center, and then you'll be bringing people in, and you will ostensibly disperse West Hartford and diversify West Hartford in that way. And I think that would be a very interesting social experiment as it goes, and would make sense.
Where is your ideal location?
I think there's a lot of different areas, but one of the places I was thinking about was in the Buena Vista area. Where
Near Cornerstone?
We're at Cornerstone, because you create effectively a campus-style environment where the entrance is the Buena Vista Drive in there, and Schechter's over there, but I know they've always been thinking about other things, and who knows how that plays out, but you also have the 9-hole Buena Vista golf course,
That's right.
which loses money in perpetuity. So when you're looking at saving money, here's a very interesting idea to save some money, to build a state-of-the-art school that would be the crown jewel of probably all of New England, with everything being the best. Now, people will say, okay, well, my kid or child won't be able to play on the varsity team. I understand that. But with a school of that size, you would allow for everybody in town to come together, create more types of thought process, organizations, things of that nature.
How old are Jack and Adam, your two boys?
16 and 13. So by the time this materializes, they'll hopefully have come back, and maybe one could be a teacher at the school.
So you've been to curriculum night, and you know what it's like to go up and down those stairs and walk around. Every curriculum night, the next day I get a cold because of all the people touching everything. And we haven't had it because of COVID, but oh, how I dread curriculum night. It's just such a huge school. And I've been to Conard because they have great college seminars for juniors and seniors. How old are your three children?
Well, Hannah's 23, Benjamin's 19, and Adam's 16.
Okay. So at least you've been through the high school experience.
Yes. Yep.
Combining those two schools, it would be so unwieldy to have so many students all in one complex, don't you think?
I don't think so. I mean,
why not?
There's a lot of towns in the New England area, Arlington, Mass, I think, and there's a couple also in Connecticut. We've looked at some research that have less than 3,000 or have 3,000 student high schools. And it works. I mean, you get a couple of levels, yes, but you have a campus style, a little bit more free-flowing as it relates to it, but they've been able to handle all of that. You still get all the resources, and the teachers that will still be there, getting them more resources to have and looking at what they can do. So it's just putting everything in a nice, neat campus. It doesn't have to be all in one building, right? So if you're building a campus style, so part of what we like to do, Don, is try to break the mold and get out of and disrupt a little bit and think a little bit differently. So if you have a campus, it's not one building, it's a couple. We've all been in different schools, so they can move around and do certain things, so you can spread things out on that campus platform.
Also, I think it would make it more diverse, because I think one of the problems we have right now is there is a large population of people of color at Conard and a very small population at Hall. And Hall also has some issues in terms of not being very diverse either. So my suggestion to you would be is keep talking about it, and hopefully people will listen. What other issues in the minutes we have left are the ones that you want to hit home? You have a very large audience of Democrats and progressives watching. I'm sure there are Republicans watching too who are saying, Tell me what your selling points are for the Connecticut Party of West Hartford.
Yes.
I want to make sure I get the name right.
Again,
the Connecticut Party of West Hartford. What are you selling?
Yeah, so we're selling a vision, right? And what can be and what the future can hold. And for us, if we think differently and we approach it in a conversation with everybody. And so that is kind of the thing we're looking at. Quality of life initiatives, looking at a number of different things, and how do we structure things? Our pedestrian and bicycle, like today, another bicyclist was hit on the roads.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we help the police and law enforcement help mitigate that? How do we look at different things to help with our community itself, limit speeding, and help be more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly in town? Those are some of the things we talk about. Community center.
Correct. And I'd also like to
senior
add
center.
for economic development in terms of strategic consolidation of old buildings, municipal buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. There needs to be some updating. And I think we need to have an open, frank conversation about how best to approach that and how to achieve that.
You also supported the Civilian Police Review Board, which is now getting underway. And I was wondering if your party has a stance on this whole defund police or fund police question.
I think part of what we'd like to do is give the police and law enforcement and Chief Riddick more resources. And how do we do that? And I think one of the ideas that we have is, why don't we look at a combined fire safety center? A town our size, how do we look at and giving them the resources that they need, not just from a building perspective, but employment? Do they have enough resources to deal with the domestic violence and doing some other stuff that can help that what our community does need? So we want to look and talk to Chief Riddick, the Chief of Fire, and how do we look and give them a real state-of-the-art center? Because they've outgrown both their buildings.
Oh,
we're throwing more money, in our town, we're throwing more money into the 2 high schools to maintain some of the older buildings. And then we're also in the police station and some of the firehouses. We need to look at how we approach those and give them more resources and modernize.
Would you be willing to take some of the responsibilities police have now in dealing with domestic violence and dealing with the mentally ill in terms of community services and putting that in the hands of social workers?
Well, I think Helen Turkett in town is doing a great job at what she's trying to accomplish through that process. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to look at and have an open, frank discussion about how best to achieve that goal as we go forward. And I think, if it makes sense, then it's something we should have a conversation about.
You said something to the WeHa folks, Mr. Gold. I have heard from my colleagues that words matter. I agree. However, I also feel that one's actions help to define who you are just as powerful. What actions do you want our viewers to take, whether it's to support your campaign or it's just to make West Hartford a better place?
One of the things I think is important is for your viewers, our constituents, town members, to speak up and speak up more. Provide letters, call me. I took 3 calls last night from people, and I take calls sometimes to the detriment of putting my kids to bed to discuss issues in town. Panhandlers being one, closing this school or closing that school is another, dealing with pensions, which is, the pension obligation bonds was a great event that has happened for our town to help alleviate some of the burden that we have in the budget. But we have to look at other options to discuss, and that's one of the things that I've been addressing with our town manager about dealing with the pension plan. Right. And trying to shift from defined benefits to defined contributions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important.
I'm going to give Mark the last word. Mark, what is it you want our viewers to know? What can they do?
What they can do, again, like as Lee said, come be active. Show your voice, step
Rise up.
And no, I wasn't going to take your line from you. But yes, and part of it is just be active. And then think of us, the 4 of us that are coming out with our platform. It's about the ideas and solutions and how do we accomplish things together.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming in, for braving the tough questions. I think it was pretty good, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Was that okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And I do hope that people listen and continue to rise up. For information about a Connecticut Party of West Hartford, go to riseupwithdawn.com. Links are there. Information about the party, reports about the party, and how you can rise up. I'm Dawn Ennis. Take care.